Hi, we're back to reading Winterdance by Garry Paulsen. We are going to try to read the most I can. I think we're going to start at Alaska. And, sorry, we'll keep going. We're going to try to read as much as we can. And the last chapter I believe we're going to read is Rainy Pass, but we're going to try to read as much as we can, but I have a lot of time on my hands, so I'm going to try to read a lot. But let's start at Alaska. Alaska. Sleep died early. Before the race, before the starting shoots, before acreage, and before even Alaska, sleep died. Training in Minnesota killed it some. Long nights that fled into long days, and still longer nights until they were all mixed and made a normal sleep almost impossible. But the desire was still there. The unforgettable morning, standing to the sled just after dawn, it became impossible to discern if it was truly morning or afternoon. It had all blended in exhaustion and slowed. The sun was in the east and proved it was mind. The dream of sleep was alive. The drive of Alaska killed it. An old truck was donated, a 1960 Chevy half-ton with salt rot so bad the floor was gone, and the seats were sitting on the ground. A friend was a mechanic, and he rebuilt the truck. Old stainless steel cafeteria tray were bolted in floors, and a welder helped by fixing up an old dog trailer. Also donated so much was given. Donated hand over that it became difficult to remember who gave what. And for those who read this, thank you for everything. It still did not seem to be happening. Did not seem to be possible that it could happen. Even at last, in the yard, the truck was loaded, packed, already experiencing what is known as rookie bulge. Load so full that the gear end was bottomed out, the rest directly on the axle. Extra food, extra sleeping bags, extra everything. The trailer was hooked up to the truck. The dogs, 20 of them now, all tough, all ready. We're loaded. The truck was running, and the man who donated the truck was coming with me to Alaska. As the boy who had decided to help me and handle the dogs, Ruth came to the driver's side of the truck. Drive carefully. That was real concern in her eyes, as there should have been. We were sitting in the truck with the 6-cylinder engine, a 3-speed transmission, plane tries with a set of discount store chains, and we were going to leave North Minnesota and Alkin Highway in a dead of the worst part of winter. It would be 60 below in the Yukon when we got there. So cold the truck heater did nothing, and we had to consistently scrape the ice off of the inside of the windshield while we drove, just to see where we were going. It took 8 days and nights, driving around the clock, stopping to lie beneath the truck on the ice of the Alkin. They do not plow it down to the surface. They leave a light layer of packed snow to drive upon, to fight the chains, tug them into the position, driving in the low gear and at 2 miles an hour to the top of the ice mountain, then stopping to remove the chains for the long run down, then stopping to put the chains on again and into the lower gear. Endlessly taking the dogs out of the trailer every 4 or 5 hours to let them shake out and pee. Then back in, grinding on the road. Twice it seemed we could not make it. A piece of metal stuck down in the overload trailer, and in some manner on a certain kind of bump rammed into the tire and blew it. We ate tires, slept tires, went through 6 tires on the trailer before we figured out what was happening. The drive proved destroyously expensive. Tore into, wrapped the money we had saved for the race before getting to Alaska. In the town of Fort Nelson, British Columbia, it was evident I was going to be broke when we got there, and that we would not be able to run the race. I sat with the man who gave us the truck. He had a wife too, 2 daughters. Was in concrete worker and worked harder than anybody I knew for every dime he made. Ugh, he said. He coughed. Often he was quiet, sometimes passed a morning without saying a word. Seems a shame to come this far and not to go all the way. We're shedding money. My wife and I were saving some. Gosh, man, you can't. Yes. He stands. The decision was made. We can. I'll call her and ask her, but I know she'll agree. And so we ground on until the last. Somehow we came to the border checkpoint going into Alaska, and the guard came out smiling at our truck, our trailer, us. We had to be fully suited up. Pargas mulks, hood up, mask, and all. Just to ride inside the truck. Nice rig, he said. And of course he was being sarcastic. We had used cans of flat black spray paint to color the truck. Fabricated a homemade plywood sled for the gear. It was easily the ugliest vehicle I had ever seen, but not then, not at the moment. I looked at it and thought of what it had done. We were now only 500 or 600 miles from where the race started, and I nodded to the guard with a not little pride in my voice and said, "Yeah, thanks." And finally, completely fried from lack of sleep, never to sleep right again. Worn beyond sleep, thinking only tire chains or tries or more tires and more tires and dogs and out of the trailer endlessly feed and watered. Finally, we were in Alaska, where it all began. Began. People, all people in Alaska, people having to do with the race, people in stores, people met on the streets. Everyone I met, wonderful, hospitable, made enormously helpful. Had they not been this way, I would never, in my applying ignorance, have made the starting clues, let alone the race. In the starting with them not laughing at us, I cannot look back on it now without laughing. And I was amazed that they could have kept a straight face. We arrived in Wazilia, Alaska, where the race headquarters was located, with a truck literally falling apart. When we released the bungee cord holding it together, the door fell off, and yet when we went inside to sign up and tell them we had arrived, one of the volunteers looked up and merely said, "Oh, yes, we heard you were coming. They say you have bad truck You have a bad truck, but good dogs. One thing became strikingly clear. I knew everything less than nothing about running dogs long distance. Indeed, much of what I had learned in training was wrong. First and foremost, the race was truly about nurturing, caring for the dogs. They are everything, all of everything, and it wasn't enough to merely scrape them some food and let them rest, which was plenty much what I had been doing. Every aspect of every dog needs to be considered: feet, teeth, contradicting, toenails, coat, wounds. For fighting and constant problems or a trail injury, nor is this a one-time aspiral. Feet must be examined on the half hour while they are running, tipping up so that they are in the light from the head limb to the toe spread, to look inside them, into the beneath the nail, along the side of the pads, up beneath the hairline on the foot, every toe, on every foot, every dog, every 30-minute, ankles and shoulder rubbed, hands on dogs, touching dogs, feeling dogs, all the time. Any time the team had stopped, hands and eyes to dogs. There was an old saying about sailors working in the ringing of tall sailing ships. It was so frightening up high that some of them simply clung to the ring, and the mate would cry from below, one hand for the ship, one hand for you, one hand for the ship. I quickly found that with the dogs, with the running them, it is no hands for the musher, and all hands, eyes, mind, soul, everything for the dogs. After signing in and getting some of the tons of the paperwork and handouts and instructions from the headquarters, much of which was almost pure Greek to me, we traveled north and camped in an area where there were many other Iditarod mushers training. It was late December. The race did not start until the first Saturday in March, and had not been for those 2 months in the bush, running dogs and seeking assistance, it would have been impossible. I begged help. The musher would come by and say hi and stop to rest his dogs, and I would pump him or her There were several women training in the same area for information, anything, everything, tributes, how to use booties correctly, how to feed correctly, water them, and the one question most difficult and to answer: what was the race like? Really like? And always they looked at me, men and women, young, old and young. They and any who had finished it or started it and had been unable to finish it. And there were many of these. Always they would look, and their eyes would get what is called a military, the 1,000-yard stare. And sometimes they would smile, and sometimes they would be a shot of something else, fear perhaps, or amazement. And they would open their mouths and say, well, and stop. It was not that they didn't want to help. Everybody helped us. Bent over backwards, escapably, when they saw how incredibly ignorant I really was. But the race, difficult. I did not understand it then, and indeed am only beginning to understand it now. But it was truly different. Beginning to understand it now, but it was truly different. Oh, for everything, and still now, if asked what it was like, I nod and smile and get the tingle of fear/amazement in my eyes and open my mouth and say, well, and stop. It is almost impossible to articulate the race as a whole. It could be broken down into sections: days, hours, horror, joy, checkpoints, winds, nights, colds, waters, ice, deaths, tragedies, small and large courages. But as a whole, to say generally what the race is like, there is no exact word. Outrageous, perhaps. Strangely insane. Staggering. Insane, altering, all of them, and more. No one word works. But given the time to stare out across nothing and think, they would start. It was at Ron River. I found God there. Coming down off of Raining Pass into the Robin River, the temperature dropped before 40 above to 60 feet below, and I came to the corner that hit my feet and froze. That where I lost my little toe. And both the runners on my sled broke. Both the runners on my sled broke, and I had dragged for 2 miles back in of the broken sled and paused to breathe. The stare came back. So watch it on Robin River. And it came then. What was described the whole event, losing a toe and being dragged and getting close to God. The whole thing took perhaps 20 minutes and 18 or so days for Christ to know how many 20 minutes segments. This was one bit of advice. The cost toes to learn to took 20 minutes to happen. This was all. Is it all joys of suffering? It was then the race, the truth about the race began to tickle. The first thoughts, the true doubts that had to be crushed, or they would end in the race before it started. The true doubts. All the heck came. Can I do this? How the heck can anybody do this? There came a time, unbroken, back-breaking effort. God was strangely all that I had to be done. With a realization that I knew nothing came the running came I need to learn. And the best way to learn about running dogs, other than beginning information, was to run dogs. I ran constantly. At first, when I met other teams, I was too shy, too embarrassed about the ignorance, to talk much, to ask for questions. But fear quickly took over. Fear, the same ignorance, would lead to despair. And I started asking. I can remember exactly when it happened. It was in the middle of the night when I met another team head on. In the area where we were training, the snow was viciously deep powder. The dog trails, hundreds of miles of them, were kept packed solid by dogs running on the team. But I stepped off of the trail, could drop in armpit deep in the snow. On this night, the snow off the trail was at least deep, waist high. And when we met, I ran up to pull my team off of the side so the other musher could get past. I was very much aware of my air meter foregain status, having come from down below or outside, and didn't want more encumbrance anybody. I was approached the front of the team and reached for Cookie. It brought me next to the other team lead dogs. It was a small dog, a female, and she promptly snaked in and took a chunk of my pant leg off, catching the meat along with it. Gosh dang it! Gosh dang! I jumped away, fell into the deep snow, and the little ditch took advantage of it by nailing me twice more on the arm and chest as I stumbled around in the snow.